Hey out there, those who are listening to GynoCurious, I want to let you know that I have this wonderful new venture where I'm spending time with women talking about all kinds of things, from the perimenopause to menopause to sex and sexual dysfunction to chronic abnormal PAPs and chronic illnesses, and ways of integrating a new way of living, diet, exercise, psychology, and your pursuit of health and wellness. So please write to GynoCurious@gmail.com. You can call 845-516-4684 to speak to the receptionist to find out more about this new practice of mine. I would look forward to assisting you in achieving longevity and the greatest of health each and every day. Welcome, and I want to just put out a disclaimer before the conversation you're about to hear. The information that's being presented today is the opinion of one person, and perhaps there are others who agree with her, but I thought it was an important point of view to bring to the GynoCurious audience. But I want you to know that I do not agree that prenatal vitamins, which is what is going to be discussed amongst many things today, and the contaminants in certain vitamins and their possible impact on the health of a pregnancy, that the American College of OBGYN, or ACOG as you might know it, strongly recommends taking a prenatal vitamin, especially before, during, and even after a pregnancy if you are breastfeeding. So I want you to know that this is, again, a conversation that is nuanced, that this is a person's opinion, and that my recommendation is that you speak to your OBGYN, that you have this conversation with them, and consider how important this nutritional intake is for you and your baby. Exposure to various contaminants during pregnancy can lead to adverse reproductive and developmental health outcomes for both the mother and the developing fetus. These contaminants include air pollutants, chemicals in food and personal care products, and toxins in household materials. The placenta, while a protective barrier, is not impermeable and can allow some chemicals to pass through, impacting the fetus. More research is certainly needed to understand the link between toxic chemicals and health concerns, particularly during pregnancy. Thank you for joining me today. Welcome to GynoCurious. I'm your host and creator, Dr. Amy Novatt. From both sides of the speculum, we are here to investigate what it means to be a healer and to be healed. Please follow, share, and rate the show. And if you have any questions or concerns, please write to comments@radiofreerhinecliffe.org. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Janet Villani-Smith, a child educator and doula. Janet has an MFA from the School of Visual Arts in New York City and a degree from the Culinary Institute of New York. And if that's not enough, she is a Bradley birth teacher and an entrepreneur. Welcome, Janet.
Thank you, Amy.
It's so great to have you here.
I'm happy to be here.
So I just like starting my interviews understanding how people got to where they are and how they see their futures, if you will. So, an MFA, culinary arts, doula. Tell us a little bit about your arc and how you kind of went into all these different places.
Yes, I hope so. Art was always a special thing for me growing up. And so I followed that path to New York City, and you become a small fish in a big pond all of a sudden. But I did pursue art and got a master's, and I still love anything art related today. But it's hard to make a living. So I had a fantastic mother-in-law. She was great. And she always said, education is not a waste. And so she helped me to go to culinary school, which I loved because I always loved cooking, and I still do. And then working in restaurants in New York City, coming home at 2 a.m, and it is very male dominated. It was really interesting. A lot of
What year was this around?
Oh goodness, it was before I had kids. I was 30 at the time, and I'm 63 now, so you'll have to do the math because I'm terrible with
So
putting a
what
year.
Is that, the 80s? Yeah, the 80s.
Yeah, the late 80s, right. So anyway, the restaurant career went on for about 2 years, and then I had an opportunity to go to Japan. That's another story with someone I met at culinary school. So that was fantastic. And
Wow.
I told the chef, I'll be back after Japan, and I just couldn't do it. That was it for me. My husband at the time said, you don't have to work anymore. We're okay. And I was like, oh, great. This is great. So I pursued my art, and then I wanted to have children. And he wasn't quite ready, but eventually I did get pregnant, and having children changes everything again. So it's like life changes. And if you have the opportunity to keep evolving, it's great if you can. And people do, just in different ways. So once I had my child, that's when I started to realize we can talk about lead in a minute, but certainly about a lead contamination problem in the environment and in prenatal vitamins, but we'll get back to that. Anyway, I needed to get out of the city once I had a child because I'm a nature girl. And so we moved upstate. And after raising my child, I had a second pregnancy, and I just wanted to become a doula. I was fascinated by the whole thing, and I think I had some birth trauma, and I wanted to help other women not to, which may not be the best motivation, but that was it at the time. And being a doula came hand in hand with learning to be a childbirth educator. So that's been fantastic and kind of really been the thing that's stuck,
It's such a creative arc. And, even being a doula is such a creative art form. You had mentioned to me how you see each of your clients kind of individually and their birth process as this, again, kind of individually nuanced journey, which is so beautiful because in contrast, as an obstetrician, the way we see patients is pretty formulaic. You meet a diagnosis, you treat them this way. And the greatest joy is being able to kind of break out of some of those barriers and treat the individual individually.
What's interesting? I've always had a complex like, oh, I'm only a doula. I haven't got a medical degree. I don't do anything medical. Doulas don't do that. But I had a labor and delivery nurse say to me, how do you become a doula? Because I want to do what you're doing. And I remember thinking, wow, I'm missing this. I'm really lucky in what I do. I can develop a personal relationship. And when I see women, how incredibly brave they are, no matter what kind of birth or what kind of obstacles may stand in their way, it's incredible, and it never gets old. So, except I'm getting old. So it's hard to be on call, and I do it less. And I've seen a lot of things, and I'd much rather be a doula for a home birth. But, these are just different things that come along.
Yeah. So I guess if you would you define or describe to our listeners what a doula is in case they don't know what that is?
So I think in Greek, it means a slave, really. But it isn't that. It's just a non-medical professional who is there to give information, physical, emotional, mental support to a woman in labor. And I like to give them that support after the baby too, because they send you home, here's your baby, good luck. They don't even say good luck. And so those first couple of weeks are really intense. It impacts the relationship with the partner and the lack of sleep and breastfeeding. So it really is nice to help with the baby. I had a client once, and I would go over there at 11 o'clock every night until 3 in the morning. She would pump milk, and I would get to be with the baby. And I'd tuck the baby in, and she'd get to sleep. It was like magic.
That's great. Great.
And every doula is a little bit different. Some will go to the person's house if they're not giving birth at home, and then stay with them and move to the birthplace. Some women will just meet you at the birthplace. It's all different, but the way I like to do it is just as soon as they call me, I'm there.
So again, somebody might hire you from the moment they're pregnant, not just at the time of delivery.
Exactly.
Great.
We have time to develop a relationship and get to know each other.
So I guess I need to hear, if you're willing to share with us, what you described as a birth trauma. And hard experiences often do shape our decisions around our careers, etc. So are you willing to share that with us?
Oh, sure.
Great.
Absolutely. I talk a lot about informed consent to my students and to my clients who are doula clients. And, just the idea that if it's not an emergency, someone says to you, look, we'd like to do this for you. We think it could help X, Y, or Z. If you don't do it, this is what might happen, and here are the risks. So the benefits and the risks. And often that's just not done in maternity, in delivery, like a vaginal exam. Maybe you should obtain informed consent instead of saying, we're going to do a vaginal exam now. So that relates to my birth experience. I remember just being young, naive, not knowing. I took a hospital birth class, which kind of grooms compliance a little bit. And I didn't really think about what exactly was important to me. I knew I didn't want to have drugs, and I knew I wanted to breastfeed, thanks to seeing my sister do it. Give her lots of credit for that. Mm-hmm. And things were done. Like, I went into the hospital just to see, and it was a midwife too. And she said, oh, by the way, I just stripped your membranes, which is a process that they think could speed labor up. And I thought, you didn't ask me that. And then it just went on from there. Going into the hospital, a resident comes in to say, we want to break the bag of waters, which is the amniotic sac, and put on an internal fetal monitor. And being flat on your back, hooked to this monitor, it just was one thing after the other. And I didn't get to put my baby skin to skin right away. They whisked him off to give him his hepatitis B shot and whatever other, give him a bath. And then he had trouble breastfeeding. So it was really a journey that was, I have to say, I was very resilient to get through it, but there were things that I would have liked to have gone differently. And if I had been more informed, I probably would have been able to say, no, that's okay. Thank you. I don't, need you to, I'd rather have that intact membrane of my bag of waters, things like that.
Yeah. It strikes me that, you use the word naive and young, and, most of us are during our first babies. Even when I had my first baby, I was an obstetrician, and there were issues and feelings and experiences I had seen as a physician, but I hadn't experienced as a pregnant woman. And it's a very different side of the speculum, if you will, And I guess it just reminds me why having perhaps a doula in the obstetrical space with one is so important, because you get to ask, the doula can interface with the clinician. The doula can remind the patient, oh, wait, you had mentioned to me you didn't want that. So let's talk about that. Let's make sure before they do that, you and I kind of really understand why they're recommending it.
Right. I have a great anecdote.
Great.
And so often women will get to a phase in labor, which is really the hardest part, and usually close to the end. But it's really difficult. And a lot of times women will vomit. And I'll be holding the whatever receptacle
Emesis
I have.
basin.
Thank you. And I remember saying to one woman, oh, this is great. And she just told me later, when you said this was great, it really gave me courage, because I thought I was dying.
Yeah.
And you feel like you are, because all of a sudden all hell is breaking loose, and you don't know, you didn't know that was going to happen. So someone just saying, you're doing great.
Yeah.
Because a woman, if she's allowed to, will go deep into an altered state, but she still hears everything. So positive and negative. So if you can kind of just be there, even with a hand or a stroke or a touch, and you want the partners to do that. And it gives them courage too, because you don't want to take the place of the partner, or you'll have terrible marital troubles in the future. So it's not my job to take that place, but it is helpful. It's just, I think there was a study that said a midwife just sitting in the corner knitting can make a woman feel even more confident throughout her birth. So
that's
right. Doula certainly does that.
That's right. There are studies, multiple studies at this point, demonstrating that having a doula in the labor suite helps reduce C-section rates. And, if that's not enough of an incentive, I don't know what would be,
yes.
right?
And I think Albany Med now has doulas on staff.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
So when your shift ends, it's unfortunate, because you don't want to leave the woman. That's
right.
That's kind of goes against what being a doula is, but it's a step in the right direction.
It sure is. Sure. It sure is. So let's talk a little bit about partners, because I again, when I was practicing obstetrics, one of my favorite parts of the experience was observing the family dynamic, or the lack of family dynamic. There was so much telling of people's stories by watching how people interacted, again, or didn't, in the delivery room or in the labor suite. Can you talk about partners? Can you talk about that phenomenon?
Oh, definitely. There's such a range. It's funny because, as much as you don't want to have any judgment, we're human and things happen. And I remember one birth, and this woman was incredible. And the husband was off in the corner watching. He never touched her. He didn't come close. And I thought, wow, that's an interesting dynamic. But it was fine. I was able to help her. She did great. And later he said to me something like, oh, do you remember at 10:24 when the doctor came in and said blah, blah, blah? And then again later at 11:15. And I thought, he was the lifeguard. He was paying close attention to everything. He wasn't writing it down. He was there in that way. That was his way to take care of her. And of course, there are other guys that are just, hands-on, and we each take a side. We're pushing hips or we're doing whatever. And it varies. But the poor partner, whether it's male, female, it doesn't matter, they don't know what to expect. So as much as I can help them say, there are smells, there are things that happen, she just needs us to be close and it takes a while, all these things. It just gives them the confidence because they're the ones that ultimately need to help her.
Yeah.
Having that loved one there is everything.
Yeah. How did you deal with the partner who wasn't particularly helpful or involved? And I'm not talking about the guy who's sitting in the corner taking note. I'm talking about, and you and I know who we're speaking of. There are partners who come in who are, I almost want to say belligerent and angry throughout the process. And that was always very hard for the nurses and staff. How do you deal with that? And I guess maybe you would be aware of that dynamic even before the event, right? Because you've met them at the home or something like that.
Yeah. Thank God I've never had someone that's really angry, but I can sometimes sense a relationship that's a little bit rocky, and the woman needs more than she's going to get, but it goes deep into the relationship. It's not just about the labor. And in those cases, I just do the best I can to try to stay objective and above it all and just be there for her and just kind of make suggestions like, if you get in really close, you stand up here, I'll hold her feet, or I'm going to massage her feet. You need to be where she can see you. And oftentimes, even in the worst relationships, like the partner just melts because he's seeing her, my God, I can't help her. And yet she's going through something incredible. And this is the birth of my child. Usually it melts pretty much everybody. So I think the event can sometimes, it may not be permanent, but temporarily give people a chance to really shine.
Yeah, and I want to point out, I brought this up purposely because part of what happens for some partners is they have so much fear. So much fear. It's paralyzing. So what's perceived as a distancing or a lack of interest or is sometimes just an overwhelming sense of gloom and doom and fear. And that is part of what a doula can do for the family dynamic too, is just, again, continually informing, reassuring, normalizing, and this helps too.
That is correct. It's just a matter of someone just sort of, I have his back, I have her back, and they can kind of do their dance together.
Yeah, I like that word, dance. It's true.
And it literally sometimes.
Yeah.
It's really nice. So
not all labor and deliveries go well. And, I've said on a number of occasions, what's beautiful and wonderful about obstetrics is that more often than not, it's positive, it's wonderful, it's magical. But when it goes bad, it can be really bad. So have you experienced that in your career?
I have.
Yeah.
And it is a heartbreaking situation. And I don't know how much I can discuss without her knowing I'm discussing her, but the death of a baby it's just horrible. And again, this is where I say these women are incredible. I mean, the bravery to give birth to a stillborn, and hold the baby and process that and go on to have another child and honor that child, never forgetting that child. It's gut-wrenching.
Yeah.
It's just gut-wrenching. But I feel privileged to be a part of that because I'm not the family, but I'm there to witness it and to cry and to all that. I'm thinking of a particular situation, and this woman, just amazing, incredible, and it's fairly scary, and the decisions that they have to make are intense. But if they can feel like they can trust their instincts, even when it goes wrong, they have that strong foundation, like this feels right, even though I'm completely conflicted. If it's a decision they have to make, that, whether to let a pregnancy, the baby come prematurely and not to have the baby go to the NICU or whatever that might be. I hope I answered that, because now I've trailed off.
No, it's a distracting notion, meaning that when any of us talk about the birth of a stillborn or the death of a neonate, a baby that's just been born, or the requirement to induce labor at very early stages because of infection or abnormal fetuses that are not compatible with life. These are hard decisions, hard experiences that really demand, as you said, kind of bravery and strength and intuition and hopefully community support, because these are really huge losses.
Yes, and that doesn't go away after the birth. It's there for life.
No.
And the partner, he or she, they don't have, they almost feel like they don't have permission to grieve, but they do just as much, even though their bodies haven't gone through the physical process of birthing this child or carrying it. It's still, for the whole family unit, it's heartbreaking.
It's not really what we were going to talk about, but I feel compelled to just say, I guess, what would you say to those listening who might be facing these kind of decisions or having just had this kind of event in their life? What would be the words of advice, consolation? What would you say to them? Because it's not a rare event, but it's so impactful.
I think I would say, and the reason I will probably say it the way I'm going to say it is because I lost my sister to ALS. And one thing I can say is, if people ask me about it or ask me about her, or how hard was that, or how could you get through that, I want to talk about it. It helps me to talk about it. So it's okay. It's just because it's been a year or 3 years or 5 years, it doesn't mean it's all sealed up. Keep talking about it and find the people who aren't afraid to ask you, how are you doing? That was horrible. Rather than, oh, you look great. Everything's great. Oh, when are you going to have another baby? Like really things that people say awkwardly because they're trying to help. But I think letting people, giving them the space to talk about it and grieve and say the baby's name and whatever it takes to just keep it alive enough so that it keeps healing and keeps healing. And it probably will get better because time does heal, but it'll always be an open wound. And it's okay to remember that child, to say the name and to have a picture and to just remember what you can that's good, and to let yourself feel the bad if you can.
Yeah, feel it. That's the point. I've talked to a couple of people on GynoCurious about grief, and what's consistently said is in a way opening the heart to the emotion and then figuring out how to move through it with honesty and integrity, and getting to a point where it's not just pain, but that where the memory is held in great honor and gratitude and love. Yeah.
And also, don't be afraid that if you thought I got this, the grieving is over, I can live, and then it hits you. All of a sudden, a song you hear or whatever, it's okay. It's still there. And it doesn't mean you're depressed. It doesn't mean you can't let go. It's alive. It's a part of your being, and it might get triggered, and that's okay.
Yeah. In this culture, we have so few guidelines, if you will, as to how to grieve. We've really given up so many of the rituals that help support us in that. So thank you for those words of advice, because I think it's just so important that people hear it over and over and over again. Yeah.
It's difficult, and everybody will do it differently, I think.
That's right. The journey is very individual. So let's shift and talk about contaminants. So you mentioned lead. So let's start with, I guess, how did you get interested in this subject matter to begin with?
I was really racking my brain trying to think about it. And I remember living in Brooklyn, and we lived in a brownstone in not a great neighborhood, doesn't matter, but it let us afford it, brownstone. And I remember the neighbor came down with a dime in his hand, and he said, I'm going to check and see if you have lead pipes. And down the basement we marched, and he scraped the pipe, and sure enough, yes, you have lead pipes. And I guess being an artist, we knew cadmium wasn't great. You didn't want to eat that if Van Gogh even ate it. I'm not sure. And we knew there was lead white, and you should be careful. But when he said that, I thought, oh, dear. So that was our first thing, get rid of the lead pipes. But then I realized, oh, my God, it's in the paint. And I used to read Organic Gardening magazine. I was always a country kid, right? And they would talk about building raised beds out of pressure-treated lumber. No, that's a no-no. And about lead, how far, if your house is lead painted, could you have a vegetable garden right near the house? And so I kind of learned about it. And then I realized when I got pregnant, wow, I'm going to have the soil tested, tons of lead, not to mention other horrible things. And I just thought, whoa, I've got to, I'll do what I can. And I got a book, and I don't know how it started, maybe because I'm a nut, but that's basically that's how it started, and it stuck,
Well, I think it's, maybe you are a nut, I don't know, but I think it also is a sign of intelligence. It's like, okay, I'm surrounded by this stuff, and what can I do to, help protect me, help protect my baby, and kind of go from there. It's curious. I guess I was thinking for myself in anticipation of our conversation today, it's like, was there ever any conversation in my training about contaminants in prenatal vitamins, the environment, et cetera, et cetera? And the only thing I remember is about lead and mercury, that mercury in certain fish. But otherwise, there was very little conversation. And now there are recommendations put out, the American College of OBGYN, the International Federation of OBGYN, the EPA, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of hedging that still goes on because, again, as I prefaced, the science is really behind. I mean, we just don't know a lot. So when you see a client or you're educating someone who's newly pregnant, do you talk about these issues?
Oh, it's the first thing. Even if someone just says, I'm interested in your class, and I'll say, okay, great, here's the stuff, but also, here's the deal on prenatal vitamins. Check out this link and decide whether, it's worth it to you. Because
let's talk about prenatal vitamins. So what do you mean?
So I'll mention this woman's name because she's a great resource. Her name is Tamara Rubin, and she has a whole kind of business now built around contaminants such as lead, mercury, arsenic, cadmium. Those are the top ones. 2 of her children, I think, maybe more, don't quote me, were lead poisoned when they were babies. So she really dealt with this, and they have some neurological deficits still as adults, young adults. So she uses public funding. And she'll say, here's a product. People will say, can you test my prenatal vitamin? Can you test my toothpaste? And so people contribute. And she's done prenatal vitamins because she's very worried about kids. That's her focus. And so far, I think she's tested 12, every single one. Lead, mercury, cadmium, arsenic. Insane amounts. I'm not kidding. Not just a little. Insane amounts. You can see it. There's a comparison chart. Not one safe prenatal vitamin so far. So that to me is just so alarming. I mean, we're talking about in utero. We're not even talking about eating paint chips like you used to see in the, ads in Life magazine or whatever in the 70s. This is something people are doing to improve their outcomes, to try to do something correctly.
I mean, it's in a way, the first thing that obstetricians will recommend to a newly pregnant person is, are you on prenatal vitamins? And the reason for that is that there is very good science showing that folic acid helps prevent neural tube defects, and that iron is also good in terms of postpartum hemorrhage, and that so many women are not getting the nutrients they need through their foods. But I did a PubMed review about prenatal vitamins and contaminants. There's fewer than you'd think. or perhaps there should be, given what you just shared with us. So how would you counsel someone? They go to, this Rubin site, and she's literally testing people's vitamins?
Yes, she's sending it to a third-party independent lab. She'll take the lot number of the vitamin, send it in. Now, I suppose each lot could vary.
Yeah.
But so far, I mean, every single one from whatever that lot was, it's alarming. So I guess it's tough because you may have women in all socioeconomic positions that may not have access to fresh vegetables or what we think of as a healthy diet. And a healthy diet in pregnancy is it's even higher than for most of us, like your calcium intake and you really need to eat a variety of foods, and protein, really important, like 80 to 100 grams of protein a day. So I guess I haven't had someone that says to me, okay, I'm not going to take my prenatal vitamins, because I think women get scared and they want to believe that this is okay.
Yeah.
But what I would say is, talk to your doctor, see if they know anything about this, educate them. And then maybe there's one fish oil that tests perfectly. And maybe if you are able to, if you have the economy to do it, eat really well, pay really attention. I mean, there's a little app you can get on your phone that tells you how much calcium you've had that day, how much protein you just enter in what you're eating. It's a full-time job, but you're doing all sorts of things to get ready for this baby. And nutrition can be fun. Food can be great. And it feels kind of good to know, wow, I've met my calcium requirement for the day. And so maybe careful attention to diet. But honestly, I really don't know. And it's possible that a single supplement, like maybe if you just take folic acid, that tests okay. I don't know where the lead is. I know calcium carbonate and other sources of calcium have it, but it could be anywhere in those multiple things in a prenatal.
Yeah. Do you know offhand whether there's a certain amount? I mean, has anyone identified, the toxic levels of cadmium or toxic levels of arsenic that might help guide people?
Well, Tamara says there's no safe level of lead. There's absolutely none. But she goes with the number of 5. I think it's parts per billion. 5 or less, she considers that okay, a reasonable risk. And we're talking levels, 1,000 times that sometimes. Wow. So, and of course, arsenic and cadmium, I mean, they're cancer causing. I don't know that there's a safe amount, but I suppose we metabolize. I don't know. I'm not a chemist, so I would just say it's unknown.
Yeah. So I guess what I'd say to those listening is, have this conversation with your OBGYN, raise the issue, talk about perhaps getting your folic acid through a single vitamin or supplement, understanding that there's very little oversight in the vitamin industry. This is part of the problem. So people can put out vitamins and make claims about those vitamins that are not quite true.
Right.
And do the best that you can to understand what your diet is and is not giving you. Because you can get really great nutrition through foods, of course, but as Janet's pointing out, it's tough to figure out sometimes, and it's time consuming. And if you're a busy mom of 3 and this is your 4th child, that may be an impossibility.
Right. But I kind of like to think, I don't think Einstein's mother had prenatals, and she did pretty well, So maybe the way women ate, like, eating the first cream or the first butter of the season, eating eggs, eating or drinking a quart of milk every day. Those can give you the foundations, and maybe a B complex, I just don't know.
Yeah, that's so tough.
It's very tough.
Yeah. The problem or the benefit of being Einstein was that in those times, they didn't have so many toxins. The air wasn't quite as polluted. The water wasn't quite as polluted. The stuff we use to clean our body and our hair and the makeup that folks will put on their skin, all these things, unfortunately, have a lot of chemicals in them. Yeah. And chemicals that we know about and chemicals we don't know about.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
But at least there's not lead in gasoline anymore. And
yeah.
I mean, it's in the environment, but we're not, at least not breathing it anymore. So in some ways, it's probably better, but it is in our bones. So if you're pregnant, make sure to get your calcium. This is the time to build bone while you're pregnant. Your body absorbs twice as much calcium when you're pregnant as when you're not. So our bodies are wise. They do things so you can optimize the nutrients in the food you're getting. It may still, you could question whether it's enough, but it's pretty smart.
It's worth trying, that's
Yes,
for sure.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So the questions that always come up in my practice were always about, okay, can I eat fish? Can I dye my hair? I'm trying to think, are there other things that are like absolutely classic that you've been asked over and over again?
Let's see. Can I exercise? How hot can
Vigorous.
I get? Can I, what should my body temperature be?
So what would you say to them?
I would say you can exercise. And if you're worried about it, go ahead, take your temperature, see how high your core gets. But I've forgotten how high you want it to go. I don't think you want it to go very much above 99.
Yeah, I mean, probably, I haven't looked at that data in a very long time, but chances are it's probably like 100.1 or something like that. I mean, we know when we're overheated. When you feel like you've got to, you want to vomit because you're so darn hot, that's not a good point to get,
Right.
When you're pregnant is not when you should hit the wall, as we say,
Exactly.
Or
you don't want to go running on, on a 90-degree day. You're
Right.
not going to do that.
Right, exactly.
And I'm trying to think the craziest thing people worry about, later in pregnancy, they worry about what position can I have intercourse with my partner in, and is it safe, or is semen going to help me go into labor faster, and lots of crazy questions like that. But most people are pretty well informed. There's a lot of information now that women can get on the internet about any number of things.
It's true. One of the things that I read about that I had not thought about before, so I want to share it. So products will often say that they're fragrance free, and this is different from unscented. And what I learned was unscented products actually can contain multiple scents that are mixed to hide an odor, and that these scents contain harmful chemicals. So if you're listening out there, please, 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 fragrance-free is what you're looking for, not unscented. And I looked in my medicine cabinet, and guess what? I have several unscented because I don't like fragrances. They're getting thrown out. Who knew?
Who knew?
I know.
You go down the rabbit hole, and before you know it, you're a lead freak, and it's really amazing.
I know. The other thing that I want to raise, and this is a difficult conversation because sometimes we have to work where we have to work, and there are environments where the exposure to chemicals are particularly hard for women. Certain farms, factory work, dry cleaners, beauty salons. When you walk in to get your hair done, and that smell of, I guess whatever it is that you take nail polish off and some of the dyes for the hair, really strong odor. So if you're working in and day out, cleaning custodial services, we're exposed to these very powerful cleaners, and healthcare. So there's science that demonstrate those of us who have spent a lot of time in ORs exposed to the anesthetics have risks associated with them. Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, just be thoughtful out there. If you're pregnant, going to get pregnant, think about what your exposure is. Some of this stuff we can control, some of it we can't. We live in a complex world and we have to pay our bills, and just think about this, not to worry yourself, but to just be informed, as Janet is talking about, that, your doula can do it with you. Find somebody to help you do the research. It so helps.
Right. It really does. Even just a child education class that's independent, you can kind of know what the roadmap is, and that is always easier than getting lost, along the way. If you kind of know what to expect with variation, it really is, it's very calming. It's really nice.
Great. Is there anything else that you want to make sure that we tell the audience around, I don't know, the role of the doula, the ways of staying healthy during pregnancy, any of the expertise that you have that you might share with the listeners?
I have a couple things that come to mind. And one is, trusting your body, trusting the process. I mean, things go wrong. Birth can be dangerous, absolutely. But your body's not a lemon, as Ina May Gaskin says. It has a wisdom. And the more you can tune into that and into your baby, I'll ask women tell me about your baby. Their baby's not born yet, but they can tell me a lot. You'd be surprised. So do that. That increases the joy. And also toothpaste. I'm sorry to
Okay, tell us.
There's so much lead in toothpaste. My Sensodyne toothpaste, Colgate, Crest, all these toothpaste marketed toward kids. There's lead in all of them. So there's like 4 that don't have it. They're pretty not very tasty, but I'm going with it. So there's that. And then you don't have to hire a doula because it can be costly, although insurance is starting to cover it. But just sort of try to understand what to expect and know what you need your partner to do. Be realistic, but how you need him to support you or her. I'm sorry, I'm just used to saying he, but it's in this world there can be all sorts of partners, even if it's not anyone that has to do with raising the child. It could be your mother, it could be whoever. Just know what would you think would help you. Whatever would help you fall asleep will help you in labor, because you want to be able to go to that place where you're not thinking anymore. So you need to feel safe, and whoever you need to surround yourself with to feel safe is really good to seek out.
Janet, that's so interesting. I've never thought about that strategy of whatever helps you fall asleep is part of the mindset that you want to bring into the labor and delivery suite. Fascinating.
It really is.
Yeah.
Dim lights, just calmness, people around you that make you feel safe. Don't, shut those lights. You can control that. There are things you can control.
Yeah. Yeah. So advocating for yourself is so, so important. And we certainly speak about that a lot on GynoCurious, like how as a patient we can have some control over the crazy world of medicine today. And particularly when we're talking about in the labor suite where we all of us feel so, out of control. And I guess I just have to ask one more question and then we're going to cut off because you mentioned home births. And I just want to make sure we mention that because, certainly from an OBGYN point of view, home births were always been considered risky. I've actually interfaced with a lot of women who have had home births or tried to birth at home and then had to come into the hospital for reasons of varied nature. And women have been birthing at home, for centuries. I guess I just ask, why would someone make that decision?
I think it takes a particular mindset before you consider that. So whatever exposure the woman's had to home birth, that I don't always know. But I think women realize that you're in the middle of this potentially painful process. It is painful, but some women don't look at it that way. And you have to get up and go somewhere else where you have no control. You're not in your environment. You don't have your own microbiome. They feel like they're losing control. So to have a midwife, this continuity of care that's going to come to you and you get to be in the comfort of your own home, which, already is more relaxing. And if you're close to a hospital and you need to transfer, they say you should be within 30 minutes. And, home birth midwives are very careful. They carry with them most everything that you would need. And if you need to transfer, they're very good at saying, I think I would feel better if we transfer now. So there's a lot of built-in safety in a situation that's not always 100% safe. It can't be guaranteed. But there's just this comfort in doing it in your own home. And my second baby was born at home and, there was nothing like it. It was just, it was wonderful.
Yeah, so I guess I would close with saying that it's a very personal decision. And if you decide, for some people, they just want the security of a NICU and clinicians and all of the, if you will, the mechanization of the labor suite that we know and have. And there are others who that just feels foreign and scary and not what they want to embrace in their labor experience. So I would just ask that you make sure that those who are helping you at home are really clear about, when to call for help and be close enough that you can get hospital care if you need it, whether it's for the laboring mom or for the baby, and just be thoughtful and informed about this decision.
Exactly. Sometimes safety is being in a medical facility. That helps a woman relax.
That's right.
And for other women, that is the antithesis of safety.
Right.
That is just too threatening. So it is interesting.
Yeah.
But there's research to be done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And who you choose. even if it's an obstetrician in a medical setting, who you choose. You ask those questions, their C-section rate, what their ideas are about induction, and all kinds of things to ask.
That's right. Great. Thank you. So I'd like to end by just asking, when you are not doing your work, what do you do for pleasure? What is something that brings you joy in your life?
Well, I'm a project freak, so I love to knit. I love to quilt, but I don't get to do that every day. And I realize what gives me pleasure every day is mealtime. I eat primarily vegetables, and I love my vegetables. They're gorgeous. I love to cut them. I love to know how they're going to taste. I can tell how fresh it is. They're just the most, an eggplant. It's so gorgeous. I'm just like cutting my vegetables, practically crying every night. It sounds crazy, but it's true. So that gives me pleasure every day. I look forward to that.
So great. You're such an artist, right? I love that you find the beauty in the eggplant, because it is a beauty. Talk about color.
I
Oh
know.
my gosh. It's so great. Well, bon appetit. And Janet, thank you so much for joining me today. And I just wish you so well.
Thank you so much. I'm not nervous at all anymore.
Good,
Thank you.
Good. And thank you to my listeners, those who are new to the program and those who have joined me before. Thank you to my co-producers, Jen Hammoud and Maddie Rosenberg, and to my editor, David Hoffman, and to the wonderful Epicurean that surrounds us each time we're here in the studio. Please come and visit in Rhine Cliff, New York. And until the next episode of GynoCurious, please be well. Listen to your instincts and intuitions. They are the greatest of teachers, not to be ignored.